I Keep From Singing, a podcast where we explore the power of singing together. My name is Stuart Stotts, and I come to you from the driftless region of rural Wisconsin. My guest today is Sam Lee. Sam Lee is a British folk singer, song collector, and environmental activist who founded Singing with Nightingales, an immersive springtime series that brings audiences into the woods to experience live music in duet with the Nightingales. A Mercury Prize nominated artist and passionate nature conservationist, he uses this project to connect people more deeply with the natural world, blending traditional song, storytelling, and ecological awareness into a powerful shared experience. Sam, welcome to How Can I Keep From Singing?
Thanks for having me, Stuart. It's lovely to be here.
When I heard about your project, I was sort of blown away because I'd never heard of anything like it. So could you first just describe what exactly it is that you do in Singing with Nightingales?
Well, Singing with Nightingales is in many ways easier to describe than what it isn't. Firstly, what I will say is it happens in the spring. It's every night an audience join myself and a guest musician and our team in the woods. It's about 40 people a night, and we do about 5-6 shows a week for 8 weeks. So it's a very solid program. It's a bit of a circus that pops up in the middle of these beautiful woodlands in Sussex, just south of London near Gatwick Airport. And what it isn't is a kind of ecological safari. It's not a concert as such. I think of it more as a kind of immersive experience that's very lovely, but really a sort of series of journeying that allows people to open their senses in a way that borrows from the ancient practices of community building, storytelling, sitting around the fire, eating delicious, locally produced organic food, waiting for the night to come by telling stories and singing songs. But then the real magic begins when we go to find the nightingale, because the nightingales are hidden in a very deep part of the land. And we leave the campfire with no light, and we walk possibly up to about a kilometer in the dark, single file in total silence to find our nightingale. And this is a kind of meditation in sensory perception, opening our ears, dropping into woodland time in the nighttime to go and find a bird. At what point, when we found him, because they're the male singers who sing their night song throughout the night from 11 p.m. through till dawn, we sit with the bird, and while he sings really close to us, very loudly, we make music, and the music that the bird receives is responded to, and he'll adapt his singing to join us for about an hour. We will sit in communion with a wild animal.
It sounds completely magical to me.
I like to think it is, and I do it maybe 40 times a year, and every night as I step out into the darkness with 40 people snaking behind me, I have this pinch me like, is this for real? Am I actually doing this? And people have actually believed that this is possible? But then the other side of me is going, when did we ever stop doing this? This is what we've done for hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancients would know this so well as they've stepped out for one reason or another to make passage in the dark. It awakens something deeply archaic, but not primitive, something primal. And I think that's where I'm tapping into some of those bits that our old DNAs, the chromosomes in us, recognize this work.
Sam, tell me a little bit about the actual duet that you're conducting or experiencing. Is that you singing? Does it include instruments? What does that look like as you're sitting there for that hour with a nightingale?
Well, every night it's different. Firstly, because we work with a different bird most nights, sometimes the same bird, night or two in a row. But also what's different is that every night it's a different musician. And we get some incredible musicians. We have people like Merlin Sheldrake coming along. We have Charlotte Church. So we've got some major superstars now saying, yeah, I'll come and do it for like 20 bucks because it's into it. So there's no money in this game, just beauty. So anyway, economics aside, and we don't pay the Nightingale either, not financially, but we do. This is an act of love and a sort of an economy of adoration. So, and the reason why I say that is because there is a sensitivity of how we work with the bird. We've totally done all the research and worked with the NGOs to make sure that what we do is not in any way affecting the mating opportunities or behaviors of the birds, but we are fully reassured by some experts that what we're doing is utterly sensitive. Every night, a different musician. I broke the interaction with the bird in a very particular way of giving him space to accept us into his domain, and then to start very slowly playing an Indian shruti, it's a drone box, and singing overtone music, as in the circumpolar and Mongolian tradition, but also Northern Territories, America, Canada style, humi and throat singing. And that's a way of subtly making contact with the bird and allowing him to come into a meeting in a very subtle, sensitive way. But very slowly, we bring the instruments in, and it's an improvisation. And we are playing with the bird. We are becoming a bit Nightingale, and the Nightingale becomes a bit human. And it's that dissolving of that sense of otherness I adore so much, that this us and another species become one. And through the music and through his adaptation of his song, the key he sings in, the rhythm of some of his decorations, it becomes very aware that the nightingale is so, so conscious of us and playful with us too. And every night it's different because every musician approaches it differently. And also, and every musician brings out a certain quality in the nightingale, and the nightingale will respond with different elaborations, let's say, depending on not the instrument, but the instrumentalist, the artist, and the spirit of that player. They're very, very aware of human personality and that communication.
Are the musicians playing a variety of instruments, and are they singing as well, or is it an instrumental duet with the nightingale?
Some are singers, yeah. I sing, that's my way of connecting with the bird. Some people play just one instrument, some have a selection of different flutes or whistles, or if it's an instrument that has many keys and varieties. Some are genius musicians who bring, their multi-string this and their flute that and their woodwind this. It totally depends. What I don't usually, as the kind of artistic director, I don't book bands. We occasionally have a small, like a duet, if they work closely on the improvisationary concept, because you can't just go and play your music at the bird. It doesn't, for me, create that spell of where we let the musician go on a journey. There's no applause, there's no light. It's done as a sort of meditation. And in that sense, artists that play from a strict tradition that is unmovable don't usually thrive in that space. But if people have the flexibility to adapt their craft, a classical musician who might improvise around a Bach piece, that can really work. But we're playing in Nightingale time to his tempo, and quality. And I think one has to really reconsider all the things that make music beautiful when one's in that space, because of the nature of him being the conductor. My hands pass through the
sky. You're listening to How Can I Keep From Singing? My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guest today is Sam Lee with Singing with Nightingales. Sam, can you talk a little bit about the ways in which the bird responds? How do you know that they're in interaction with you? What kinds of things do you notice and experience?
There are three types of responses. There's one where he stops You're like, oh, that's what we're dealing with tonight. There are those times where you approach him and he's not singing, and I'll be able to get him going. I love those nights where you get the shy bird and I work my magic and up he pops and starts singing. And then there are the nights where he's singing when we arrive and he keeps on singing. And each one has multiple sorts of versions. They have an on-off style of singing. So the famous thing about the nightingale is they're an improvisatory bird. They never repeat their song twice, unlike other birds in the European kind of ecology that have very set, maybe shifting, but familiar patterns. Nightingale has up to 1,200 different sounds and 250 different phrases. So there is a constant reimagining of the song. So they never repeat themselves. And they sing, 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 do their gesture, beat, 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 wah, 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 root, 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 jug, 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 whatever it might be, whatever combination, like a fruit machine of a cascade of different sounds. And then it's a stop. And they listen and then they come back in again. So it's always this on, off, and I call it the decoration of silence. But what happens is when they hear music, they start to change the key with which they're singing. They will sometimes do these gestures that are very highly extenuated and ornamented to fit in with the music. Sometimes if there's rhythm coming in really closely to that rhythm, it's not that they start singing harmonies, and there are birds that can do that and have extraordinary capacity to memorize. The bullfinch in the UK being one of the most phenomenal song mimickers, as well as starlings, and you have mockingbirds as well, and there are several others, parrots, of course, I mean. But nightingales stay within their style. They just start to slip around to welcome us and to really help ornament and in a kind of funny way drill into what we're playing and challenge us. They're a very challenging bird for a musician because they're highly complex song.
This is not mimicry. This is response and interaction and mutual connection and relationship.
Mm. Yes, it's. I think people expect the bird for A to be possibly mimicking us, so they think, "Oh God, the bird's just going to copy what we do in some sort of facsimile, musical facsimile, feathered facsimiles." No, 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 they're not at all. Neither are they trying to do anything but stay resolutely themselves. It's for them, it's an act of. I use this in a cautious way because it's overused as a word, but the reciprocity because I think there's something much more complex and much more ancient. When I say ancient, I mean on a millions of years. You know, the birds have been evolving their song for millions of years. We've only developed music and sound and speech and song in the last tens, hundreds of thousands of years. It's a very modern, very fast adaptation. Birds have been doing this and learning their craft for a long time. So we, in many ways, have learned what we do from birds like the nightingale. They have no doubt been informers on our practice. So there's things they know that we are children in our journey of learning of. And I can't always explain what that is, but I know that I could tell you from story so many times when the birds have been highly aware of spirit or the soul of the artist or people in the group. It's not just about the artist, it's also about us as a collective holding that container where the birds have been very aware of what's being sung about and very aware of who we are and how they respond differently. And I can almost tell sometimes what the response is going to be from to certain musicians just by me understanding who someone is. It's very curious, working kind of outside the kind of obvious realm of criterias and judgments. It happens all very on an essential level.
I get choked up just thinking about this sense of the birds as teachers and observers over a much longer period of time than our consciousness
Mm,
has. and then being able to, in some way, enter this, again, the word ancient or primal or just old way of being in nature.
Mm.
Sam, what do you do if there's a shy bird? What do you do? It sounds like you have methods or techniques or approaches that can help bring a bird into song.
Well, sure, I can't give all my tricks away, you know. The magician must remain a mystery. The magic must be hidden from sight. And there are things that I can do. And I've learnt in the 11 years I've been doing this, meddle less and accept what might be. And there's a kind of stoicism one has to have when it's a night that we only really get maybe one night, two nights at the most where there's no sing. I mean, very rarely do we have no sing, but where there's no kind of full song. Most of the time they are there. There's several of them. They love to sing. It's their absolute life purpose. I'm always consoled by the knowledge that we are in the presence of the bird. In fact, in many ways, there's a power in knowing because, firstly, just to say, how do you know this? Well, um, the males set up territory, and when they find their territory, they do not move. They are absolutely rooted. That is their flag in the ground, and their singing is defense of that. And I've seen them fight it out between each other as well. So they don't move more than about 100 yards, but at night they stay in exactly the same place to sing. Now, when they stop singing, it's because they've mated. They found their mate, their job is done. They don't need to sing anymore. It's very expensive singing. Line for your podcast there. um, it's energetically on a cold spring night, it can kill a bird.
Yeah,
And yeah, and I think there's a lesson in that for us to recognize. So we are there with them. If they're not singing, we try and find others. If there's no song that night because they've all mated and we're at the end of the season or something like that, then we go to where they are and we make music. And it's still beautiful. And there are still other sounds of the night, owls and foxes crying, and if we're lucky, a bit of lapwing or hedge sparrows. They give a nice song. Nothing like the nightingale, of course, but I think music in that space is always magic, and you can't control nature, you know.
how big is a nightingale?
Tiny,
Oh,
yeah, tiny, tiny bird. Size of your robins and our robins are slightly different,
right.
but yeah, like a kind of fluffy ping pong ball. Yeah, yet one of the loudest voices.
Interesting that something so small can generate so much noise.
Happens in humans too, though, right?
Right. Sometimes to not good effect. Sam, how'd you get into this?
I borrow from the elders, I guess. Nothing that I'm doing at its essence isn't an inherited practice. Yeah, maybe there's a wacky 21st century crazy artist cooking it all up together in this fabulous, idiosyncratic, slightly wonky, beautiful showman way. But the core ingredients of what I'm doing stem from very ancient practice of nature communication and musical and folkloric connection to nightingale. We've been singing with nightingales for thousands of years. Poets have been writing and myth makers have been writing about, in devotion to this bird for thousands of years. We have volumes of material of people inquiring and receiving from this bird. So I'm standing on their shoulders. I'm standing on the shoulders of a very amazing British cellist who discovered this, rediscovered it by accident in 1924 and brought the BBC to make the first ever live radio broadcast back in 1924 with her playing the cello, the Nightingale. So there's a bit of the first ever kind of media viral sensation happened with the Nightingale. But I think these are all things that happened in our kind of, dare I say, almost living memory because they have all figured in our human journey, our species journey, this going to pay homage and receive song and learn from this bird because they're the only bird that really sings at night prolifically. So they are a symbol of the artist, the pained lover, the devoted, pious, the believer in God and spirit. They are a very spiritual animal in that respect. And I've received so much teaching from them, and the guests who come also, it's a threshold experience. And nature provides so many threshold experiences, but they're not always obvious. One needs to find those portals and those doors. And I trained in nature connection and wilderness work, much the American tradition, in fact, and have realized that what I'm borrowing from those old skills and those old ways is how to pierce the veil and bring people across. And because of that, we have an amazing response. The audiences that come are moved deeply, sometimes lives changed. The stories I receive of grief and healing are phenomenal. And that's ultimately what singing and music is all about. Entertainment is a modern exploitation of these things. I'm really trying to bring back us to the raw, to the garden of where these things were forged and discovered and honed, these old crafts.
People are hungry for these kinds of experiences, even if they don't know that they're hungry for them. So I
Mm.
would imagine when they arrive and are part of this, something deep inside themselves is awakened. You're also a musician, if I understand, a songwriter, a composer. How does this work affect your work that's not specifically with Nightingales?
Oh, that's a lovely question, and it's nicely asked. I'm a folk singer and I write into the folk tradition. I work with traditional British and Irish song. In some ways, the Nightingale is a I've made a great, endeavor out of working with these birds for 2 months because they make that opportunity, but they're not the only species in my life. I'm first and foremost a nature lover. I always often say I'm a nature lover with a folk singing problem, as opposed to a folk singer with a nature problem. And I feel that, as I get to my middle age of 45 right now, I've realized that everything I do in my work and my art is in service to nature. It's what the wild service is what we call it over here. And that my music, even though it might be of a very human lineage, what I'm reactivating and animating is that sense that our old folk songs are actually the truest expressions of us as nature connected species, as from a time where that separation, that Cartesian split that set us against the natural world, reminds us of, not in a unrealistic way, of actually how much we need the natural world and how much the disinheritance of the wisdom that we have received from nature and that we need to be able to steward nature better is passed down so wonderfully in our songs. And they are there as the kind of, yeah, almost like the electric filament in the kettle, keeping ourselves warm and alive and doing the activation. So they hold a very, very old magic and a very old potency that has been neglected because it feels irrelevant, and they feel out of date, not useful or in any way purposeful, but actually they are super, super valuable entities. And working with the composition and curation, and I work with musicians and I have a band and I record albums and things to, what one does, but always at the heart, the song and nature are my sort of collaborators, I guess, to support me in finding how to make these songs as of today and accessible and sonically attractive as possible, because we've got to make it sexy and we've got to make it irresistible. Otherwise, it's just that ugly, messy, dirty stuff, and it's all let's get like an old chair we don't need anymore. But actually, they're beautiful things, these songs, and they're part of something that we need to be remembered of what their role is and how we carry them into these uncertain times ahead.
Yeah, this repository of song and story is our birthright. And it's also a little hard to sell back to us when we already own it. So,
Indeed.
Sam, have you written any songs specifically about nightingales?
I have actually, yes. I have, yeah. It's not overtly about the Nightingale, but my last album, Song Dreaming, which came out March 2024, feels a long time ago now, has a song in it called Bushes and Briars, based out of an old folk song collected by Vaughan Williams, in fact. Not a song that I collected myself. Yeah, that was written about the nightingale. It's about the grief of being in the presence of a bird that, as was is the case in our country, the bird's going extinct very fast.
Interaction with nature and love of nature always has, I believe, grief as part of it as we watch what's happening in our world.
Hmm.
And this ability to reconnect is going to bring joy, but also a recognition of what we're facing.
I mean, I'm just pausing because it is so disturbing what is happening, particularly, and my shock at watching what happens right this very day in your country right now is terrifying, terrifying that of what we can do to our own kind, and the sort of wanton destruction and this sort of unstoppable force of destruction that is happening. It's very hard to know how to have hope in a time like this. But hope is an active word. It's about doing stuff. So for me, the doing the Nightingales, making this music, it's my way of knowing that I'm holding something that I think is beautiful and important together and keeping it alive, even if a lot of other people don't want it alive or it's worth more dead.
I so appreciate what you're doing in just bringing this sense of beauty and joy in a world that is turbulent and violent and increasingly challenging for people and the planet itself. So, Sam, I want to thank you so much for being with me here today and talking. I'll put information with a link to your website and to your music as well. But in the meantime, I'm just deeply grateful for the work that you're doing on all of our behalf and on the behalf of the birds as well.
Thank you, Stuart. Yourself too. Thanks for making space for me to share this.
You've been listening to How Can I Keep From Singing, a production of Common Arts. My name is Stuart Stotts, and my guest today was Sam Lee with Singing with Nightingales.